Ladies and gentlemen, please Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the President of the Republic, Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign and European Affairs of the Republic of Slovenia.
The burning sun casts scorching light on fragmented pathways. Shattered directions to a spiral of possibilities. The sabers rattle. The age of peace has ended on antagonism's sharp-edged steel. Real politics, global supply chains wrapped around the neck of a youthful figure behind the horizon. Where have all those dreams gone? The glowing hope and laughter of a carefree child? Buried in the fields of Zaporizhia, covered by the sands of the Levant. The world watches, standing idle, shattered responsibility, acknowledged by only a few. A mosaic of realities we face, a chorus of power plays, and double standards disintegrating into conflict. Territorial integrity or self-determination? Human rights or cultural distinctions? Self-interest or perhaps common values? In a tapestry of futures interwoven, we are fighting and doubting and talking over each other. But the furnace is getting hotter. But the furnace is getting hotter.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary General of the Bled Strategic Forum, Mr. Peter Girk.
Thank you very much for this powerful video. Dear Excellencies, Presidents, dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 19th edition of the Bled Strategic Forum. You know, I'm a big fan of Johnny Cash, a famous American singer and songwriter. He wrote a song in 1971 called or titled Man in Black. He wrote it because he was disillusioned with the world he was living in. We are in 2024. I'm afraid that somewhere above, Johnny is still wearing black, and it doesn't seem likely that he will put on bright colors anytime soon. For a long time now, the world seems to drift from tragedy to tragedy. From Ukraine to Gaza and Sudan. From Burkina Faso to Myanmar, Yemen, and Somalia. The list goes on and on. We are witnessing destruction, loss of innocent human lives, hatred, and total absence of compassion and solidarity. The world needs good news. It needs them now. Moreover, I'm not just talking about the conflicts, but also about issues which are equally or even more important for our common future: climate change, migration, energy, and food security. I don't believe in doomsday scenarios. I still believe that together we can overcome these parallel realities we are living in and find common ground which would allow us to move towards a more sustainable and just future. Basically, I still believe in humanity. I still believe in humanity. But we need a change. Thank you. But we need a change in how we deal with challenges. Fragmented processes yield fragmented and unjust solutions. We cannot continue just patching things up here and there. We need a comprehensive, I would say a global plan. We need a summit of the future plan. And I hope in the next weeks we will be able to get to that. Before I give the floor to our host, Minister of Foreign and European Affairs, let me just take this opportunity and thank my team, especially my conference director, Matej Gregorec, technical and logistical director, Urška Volk-Kovačić, and their teams. Without them, nobody of us would be actually here today. Maybe except me, hiding in some corner of the festival halls. Same goes for our partners and friends who support us over the years. And now, let the 19th Bled Strategic Forum begin. Allow me to pass the floor to the Minister of Foreign and European Affairs and the host of the event, Ms. Tanja Fajon. Minister, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Dear President of the Republic of Slovenia, Ms. Nataša Pirc Musar, Prime Minister of the Republic of Slovenia, Mr. Robert Golob, President of the European Commission, Ms. Ursula von der Leyen, Prime Ministers, Secretaries, General Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome to the 19th edition of the Bled Strategic Forum. This year's title, Parallel Realities, seems to be particularly appropriate, although not necessarily for a positive reason. It reflects the state of the world today. It points to a number of injustices and inequalities. It exposes dishonesty and duplicity in decision-making. It shows the consequences of broken promises, and it appeals to our conscience and our responsibility. It involves fiery speeches and proposals in air-conditioned halls and loads of bitter tears and despair in unfriendly environments around the world that we visit in the course of our political and diplomatic work. We are surrounded by an increasing number of weapons and conflicts, and the number of wars is at an all-time high. Currently 92, that is almost half the world's countries, are involved in conflicts outside their borders. The war in Ukraine has been going on for 2.5 years. In Tigray, almost 4 years. In Afghanistan, for decades, and Sudan, over a year. Not to mention all the other forgotten crises. Soon it will be a very sad anniversary of yet another outbreak of hostilities in the Middle East, which began on October 7 with a Hamas attack on Israeli civilians, and retaliation led to a humanitarian disaster in Gaza, and in the intensification of the collective punishment of Palestinians also in the West Bank. How is it possible that after having invested so much in international law, the United Nations Charter, the International Bill of Human Rights, and multilateralism as such, security threats are multiplying and the structures and pillars of global cooperation, such as international organizations and international norms, are crumbling? How do we feel when we see images of crying, wounded, and dead children, women and men? Why have we reached a point where actions are described as impotent, important but worthless, or meaningless phrases? Politics and diplomacy need to prevail over particular interests that lead to such results. Ladies and gentlemen, in September, Slovenia holds the presidency of the Security Council. Our country takes the responsibility very seriously. We will work tirelessly to ensure that our voice is heard, even if there is a degree of frustration and not seeing results on the ground. We will work despite the feeling of powerlessness, even when a veto is cast. And if we hear WCNSF during the debate, we will work even harder. Does anyone know what WCNSF stands for? Wounded child, no surviving family. It is an official new acronym in the health vocabulary of Gaza. It inspires a feeling of despair. But on the other hand, all this gives clarity about what was expected, what was demanded, and what was not respected. And one day, it will be a source of reflection. The Security Council has made clear what it wants. The 4 resolutions adopted would create a new reality if fully implemented. The responsibilities of each UN member state are clear, based on the statements made by the members of the Security Council, and in the absence of Israeli compliance, I believe we need to enforce implementation of the resolutions. I'm aware that this will be a very difficult political question for many in the Security Council. And speaking of responsibility, I call upon other countries to recognize Palestine as a sovereign and independent country, and to support a 2-state solution. It is a fact that the Middle East is being militarized and weaponized. The role of global and regional actors in this must be made clear. This trend cannot bring peace in the region. Actors on almost all sides are using the volatility to justify their own political survival. The same applies to the war in our immediate neighborhood, the European neighborhood. For the European Union, support for Ukraine remains unquestionable. Slovenia will continue to work for a just and a lasting peace in Ukraine, and it's clear that peace cannot be achieved without cooperation and dialogue between all parties. We hope that Russia will stop the aggression and the war and engage in negotiations in good faith on the basis of international norms and in full respect of the UN Charter. Let me also mention that last week in Brussels, I urged to strengthen the sanctions against the leaders who violate international law. I also called for an urgent humanitarian ceasefire so that children in Gaza can be vaccinated against various diseases, notably polio. The main feature of today's wars are the constant, brutal, and targeted attacks on civilians and civilian infrastructure, which constitute a flagrant violation of international humanitarian law and must stop immediately. Slovenia is aware of the importance of rapid assistance in humanitarian crises. In our ministry, together with national and international strategic partners, we strive to provide fast and effective assistance on the ground. In recent months, with financial support for almost 1,000 internally displaced families from Gaza, medical equipment for the hospital in Bethlehem, and the rehabilitation of children from Gaza in Slovenia. In Ukraine, the complete renovation of a home for disabled children and young people with special needs continues, with the construction of psychotherapy rooms. The situation in Ukraine has shown that civilian nuclear facilities can also be the subject and target of the attacks. This is a blatant violation that should not only be condemned, but also sanctioned. At an informal ministerial meeting in Brussels last week, I mentioned that we were considering organizing an event at expert level with some partners to launch this reflection. The war in Ukraine has a huge impact on the enlargement policy of the European Union. I'm afraid the people of the Western Balkans, especially youth, are losing their hopes. Last year, on this very podium, the President of the European Council, Charles Michel, expressed his strong conviction that both the European Union and the candidate countries must be ready for the enlargement by 2030. This vision must be kept alive. It is a geopolitical imperative and must become a geopolitical reality. It is, of course, up to both sides to do their homework, the candidate countries to speed up the reform process, and the EU to adopt its internal processes and policies in union in order to function as a union potentially of 37 members who will, in my deep belief, live in peace and stability. Slovenia will continue to do its best to make the EU more united and more prosperous. We share a vision of a stronger Europe that delivers social fairness and supports people. Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, I painted a rather bleak picture of the world today, but I also pointed out that we can make a difference. Yesterday, I visited the Youth Bled Strategic Forum. I was impressed by so many young participants, critical, thinking, and inspired by their hope for a prosperous future and a better, fairer world. At the Slovenian Ministry of Foreign and European Affairs, we have just completed our first strategic foresight with 4 different world development scenarios. The most idealistic, called on the sunny side of the rainbow, includes prosperity for all. And I'm not naive in believing that this can be achieved soon, if ever at all. But to create the conditions for everyone to enjoy their human rights, including the most basic, the right to live, one must remove vanity and hypocrisy from our equations and replace them with responsibility and empathy. In mathematics, the lowest common denominator is used for addition, subtraction, and comparison. But these are just numbers. The lowest common denominator of world order can only be one: peace. Political, economic, and other equations that ignore it are simply wrong. They have a horrible result: victims who are not numbers, but human beings. I appeal to all of us to make and implement decisions with the highest possible degree of moral responsibility. There is no other way to make the world a home for all. I wish you all very fruitful discussions and a very pleasant stay in Bled. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the Republic of Slovenia, Ms. Nataša Pirc Musar.
Mr. Prime Minister, Mrs. Deputy Prime Minister, Madam President of the European Commission, other Prime Ministers, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. We gather today at a moment of profound consequence. The year 2024 stands as a crossroads for humanity, where the decisions we make will shape the contours of our shared future. Over the last few years, the world has been shaken up by a global pandemic, extreme weather events linked to the deepening of the climate crisis, rising food insecurity, global economic and financial uncertainty, blatant violations of the UN Charter and international law, continuation and even escalation of prolonged conflicts and the emergence of new ones, as well as, yes, disrespect for human rights and attacks against gender equality. At the same time, it became clear that the achievement of Agenda 2030 and its sustainable development goals is lagging far behind its targets. Our strategic vision must be one of unity, resilience, and a shared commitment to the betterment of the people. First, let us acknowledge the complex and interwoven crises that demand our immediate attention. The ongoing climate emergency continues to wreak havoc across our planet, with record heat waves, devastating floods, and raging wildfires becoming distressingly common. The path forward requires bold, collective action that transcends borders and politics. We must redouble our efforts to transition to a sustainable, low-carbon global economy and support the nations and communities most vulnerable to climate impacts. For us, the developed world, we should lead the way towards a sustainable future and learn how to live with less but better, and simultaneously support those who are lagging behind. The triple crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution presents a major security, political, and socioeconomic challenge for the international community as a whole. The growing number and the scope of natural disasters, as well as extreme and rapidly changing weather patterns everywhere across the globe, must be a wake-up call to us all that we need to step up our climate action. We need to make sure that we leave the world a better place for future generations. Implementing the right to a safe, clean, healthy, and sustainable environment is therefore of key importance. Human rights and dignity must be placed at the center of any measures to tackle the environmental crisis. Furthermore, the world today faces an unprecedented water crisis. Competition for water is increasing as water scarcity becomes an ever-increasing cause of conflict. Slovenia has been calling for accelerated action on water-related challenges globally, emphasizing the relevance of water for human development, preservation of ecosystem, climate resilience, and peace and security. Being a strong believer in the value of transboundary water cooperation, we are a member of the Transboundary Water Cooperation Coalition. We will host the 10th meeting of the parties to the UN Water Convention this October in Ljubljana and take over the chairmanship of the convention for the next 3 years. The steep increase in global food insecurity, which threatens to destabilize further already fragile societies and to exacerbate armed conflicts, leading to regional and global instability, should be of great concern to us all. Famine, ladies and gentlemen, has no place in the 21st century. Slovenia is a strong supporter of the international efforts against famine and is highly committed to contributing to global food security. I am also very worried about the alarming escalation of geopolitical tensions in the world. In many regions, the specter of conflict looms large. The return of great power rivalry, complete with the proliferation of advanced military technologies, has increased the risks of misunderstandings and miscalculations. We must reaffirm our commitment to diplomacy and the principles of international law and work tirelessly to resolve disputes through dialogue rather than force. The United Nations, with its unique legitimacy, remains an indispensable forum for these efforts. The world today is not the same as the world in 1945, when the United Nations Charter was adopted. Therefore, we need to strengthen and upgrade global governance and adapt multilateral institutions, including financial ones. But let me be clear, the multilateral system rooted in the United Nations Charter must remain the cornerstone. We need to work on rebuilding trust, strengthening global cooperation and solidarity. Slovenia is currently serving its term in the UN Security Council. One of the motivations for our candidature to serve on the Security Council was precisely to improve the challenged state of affairs in the UN. For that, we need to work in concert with other states, including small ones. We must listen to all voices, not only the voices of big and influential international states and other actors. In the first 8 months of the UN Security Council membership, Slovenia has followed its commitments from the campaign to be an active, open, transparent, and constructive member. We have focused on efforts to bridge the polarization in the Council and to help move the process in the Council forward. There is a growing need for the international community to overcome existing geopolitical divides and to address new threats and challenges to international peace and security, as well as to be able to effectively respond to humanitarian disasters, as we are witnessing in Palestine, Sudan, Ukraine, and elsewhere. In the words of Secretary General António Guterres, peace is more than a noble vision. It's a rallying cry and a call to action, and it is humanity's greatest responsibility. The growing number of conflicts and their increasing cruelty continues to astound me. For 2.5 years, Ukrainian people have been courageously fighting for freedom and independence. For 2.5 years, Russia has blatantly violating all norms and principles that we agreed on together to make the world a better and safer place. But as long as the UN Charter and international law are being ruthlessly trampled, as long as civilians are suffering and towns are being reduced to piles of rubble, we will not tire of condemning the Russian aggression and upholding the universal principles that guide us all. I have recently been in Ukraine. It broke my heart to see and hear about so many lives being lost, families being torn apart, and childhoods being destroyed forever. But it is not only Ukrainian people who suffer because of this senseless war. Even though the war is raging on European soil, it is also not only a European matter. Its repercussions have been felt across the globe. Food insecurity has put the lives of millions in danger. So have the attacks on and around nuclear facilities in Ukraine. Yes, we all want peace, but let us be clear. While there are two warring parties, Russia is the aggressor and Ukraine is the victim. It is the right of Ukrainian people to defend their homeland, and it is our collective duty to support them and protect the world based on law rather than force. That is why Slovenia will continue to stand by Ukraine and its people for as long as it takes. Slovenia will also continue to support the efforts towards just and lasting peace. We know peace cannot be achieved without the involvement of and dialogue between both parties. However, any peace negotiations must be grounded on the UN Charter and international law. It is up to Ukraine, the victim, to decide when and under what condition this will happen. And it is up to Russia to demonstrate genuine willingness and engage in good faith. Bombing Ukrainian cities every day proves the exact opposite. As a staunch supporter of international law, I would like to underline one more point which is important for my country. There cannot be peace unless justice is served. Slovenia will spare no efforts in pursuing full accountability for the long lists of atrocities and other international crimes committed in and against Ukraine. With equal horror as in Ukraine, we observe the violations of international humanitarian law in Gaza. Israeli hostages are still held captive. Palestinian women and children are dying every day in their hundreds. This has now become the world's deadliest conflict in 2024, and the most dangerous place for civilians. A full 88% of its population is exposed to conflict. Targeting civilians is not a legitimate military strategy under any circumstances. Hostages must return to their families safe and unharmed. A ceasefire must be put into effect. Civilians must be allowed immediate and safe access to humanitarian assistance. As we work to avert a larger regional war, it is essential to address the suffering in Gaza and pursue a two-state solution, the only viable path to lasting peace. Slovenia's recognition of Palestine underscores the importance of this goal. Additionally, empowering the Palestinian Authority with the necessary reforms and resources is crucial for governance and stability. However, we cannot view global security solely through the lens of state-to-state relations. The rise of non-state actors, cyber threats, applications of artificial intelligence for military purposes, and the weaponization of misinformation and disinformation have added layers of complexity to global peace and stability. In this digital age, the integrity of our information space is as crucial as the security of our borders. We must forge new international norms and agreements to safeguard cyberspace, while also fostering greater cooperation in the fight against terrorism and organized crime. The economic landscape is equally fraught with challenges. The global economy is navigating turbulent waters, with inequality widening both within and between nations. The COVID-19 pandemic, while no longer in its acute phase, has left a lasting legacy of disruption. Millions of people remain unemployed, and many more face precarious futures. We must rebuild our economies in ways that are inclusive and sustainable, ensuring that the benefits of growth are shared by all. This requires not only sound economic policies, but also a renewed commitment to social justice and human rights. The future is not fixed. Although it drives uncertainty in the short term, it also allows room for hope. Alongside global risks and the era-defining changes underway lie unique opportunities to rebuild trust, optimism, and resilience in our institutions and societies. This is why I highly value occasions such as the Bled Strategic Forum, since they enable us not just to talk to each other, but to listen to each other and exchange ideas on how to tackle the global challenges I mentioned before. The challenges we face, whether they are environmental, geopolitical, economic, or technological, are global in nature, and they require global solutions. We must reaffirm our commitment to multilateralism, strengthen our international institutions, and foster a spirit of cooperation that transcends narrow national interests. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, let us remember that the ultimate goal of our efforts is to create a world where all people can live in peace, dignity, and prosperity. And dear guests, this is not an idealistic aspiration. It is a practical necessity. In an age of unprecedented global challenges, our fates are more intertwined than ever before. We must act with the urgency that this moment demands, guided by the principles of justice, equality, and above all, mutual respect. Together we can build a future that is worthy of our highest aspiration, a future where humanity's potential is fully realized, and when the world's most pressing challenges are met with resolve, creativity, and compassion. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you all for coming to my country. I wish you are going to enjoy your stay in Bled, in Slovenia, and I wish you to have many fruitful conversations, and let us try to do something for the better world together. Only together this is possible. I firmly believe in that. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, the moderator of the panel, Mr. Ali Aslan.
Hello, everyone. Wonderful to be back here at the Bled Strategic Forum. My name is Ali Aslan. I'm an international presenter and journalist, and I've had the pleasure and privilege to grace this stage so many times in the years before. And I'm looking in the audience, I'm seeing many, many familiar faces. Former President Fajon, always great to see you. I'm seeing former Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu. I saw him here. Great to have you with us. But I'm also seeing some first-timers. Yulia Navalnaya, wonderful to have you with us, of course. We'll be seeing you up there in a moment. Garry Kasparov, I'm seeing him here in the first row. First timer, I believe. It's great to have you with us indeed. So as you can see from the names, and of course many, many Western Balkan leaders whom I have the pleasure of sharing the stage in just a moment. But it is really, truly delightful to be back here at the Bled Strategic Forum. And those who've been here before in previous years, they know that this was a relatively small regional conference. But look at it now. It's a full audience, many people waiting in line still to get in, if you will. And I think that speaks a lot to the efforts and credits of the Slovenian government, of course, the current one, the previous ones, to Tanja Fajon, the host, Peter Gurk, the Secretary General, and his team. Let's give him another round of applause for this really great accomplishment that they have managed here over the years. And so much so has the BSF, the Bled Strategic Forum, gained in international reputation that word has spread all over the globe, including New York and the United Nations. The UN Secretary General, António Guterres, would have loved to be here. Unfortunately, his schedule prevented him from being with us in Slovenia, but he still didn't want to pass up the opportunity to address this very distinguished audience. Let's see what he had to say.
This year's Bled Strategic Forum comes at an opportune moment as Slovenia assumes the presidency of the UN Security Council. I congratulate Slovenia on the vital responsibility during these crucial months. You gather as our world is beset by challenge after challenge: poverty, hunger and inequality, climate chaos, a global financial architecture that is not providing an effective safety net for developing countries, a flouting of human rights, international law, and United Nations Charter around the world, and ferocious conflicts that are inflicting suffering, misery, deaths, and the largest displacement of people since the Second World War. Your team, A World of Parallel Realities, pinpoints the problem. We are living in a world divided. Healing this divide and tackling the challenges facing us requires finding common ground solutions. Solutions such as accelerating action to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, reforming today's outdated, dysfunctional and unfair global financial architecture so that it better represents developing countries and responds to their needs, tackling the climate crisis and anchoring economies in renewable energy, standing with the world's most vulnerable people, including those living through conflicts and humanitarian emergencies, and recommitting to the timeless values and the principles of the United Nations Charter: peace, sustainable development, human rights, and upholding the dignity and equality of every woman, man and child on earth. This month's Summit of the Future is a chance for leaders to put forward new solutions and commit to action that can revitalize the multilateral system and build trust in what we can accomplish as a united human family. Across all this important work, I know we can count on you. Let's bridge divides and bring people together in common purpose for a better future.
Thank you so much to the UN Secretary General, who I'm sure is very excited about Slovenia taking over the presidency of the Security Council very soon. But now I have the great pleasure of inviting a female leader here up on stage who has shaped European politics for the past 4 years and will do so for the next 4 years. She's already been here 5 years, I'm sorry. So she's giving me this sign here. There you have it. I was thinking of US cycles. It doesn't work the same. 5 years, you have an extra year, so more work to be done. I'm looking forward to that. So for the next 5 years, a lot of challenges that Europe will be facing. We've already listened to the speeches prior, but of course she will embark on a very challenging but hopefully fruitful endeavor. She was already here 2 years ago. We're delighted to welcome her back, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. Herzlich willkommen. Schön, Sie wiederzusehen.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister Gallop, President Musar, dear Nataša. Prime Minister Gallop, dear Robert, I thank you very much for taking me to Črna this morning. I had the opportunity to visit Črna, to be back in Slovenia, to the stunning beauty of Slovenia, but I was there last year, right after the devastating floods, an effect of climate change. We should not fool ourselves about that. It is something which we will see more often. And it was heartwarming and welcoming to see how much progress has been done compared to last year. Last year, destruction, devastation, everything covered with mud, people desperate, of course. Today, reconstruction, recovery, cooperation, amazing people with solidarity working together. And indeed, you know that Europe is by your side, and I could reassure the people of Črna, but of course the people of Slovenia, Europe will stand by your side to work on the recovery and reconstruction after these devastating floods. You can count on us. I'm very pleased to see here Prime Minister Plenković, my dear Andrej. Yes, please, please. All the Croatians in the room. Prime Minister Rama, dear Eddie, needs an applause. Prime Minister Vučević, we have not met personally so far, but we will soon have a bilateral. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, your applause first of all. This forum has become a tradition. And it is also a testament to Slovenia's global leadership. The same leadership that we all see in action this year through your work in the UN Security Council, and the words of the Secretary General Guterres speak for themselves. You have been an honest broker in turbulent times. So congratulations to you, dear Robert, and to your Foreign Minister, Madam Fajon. You have made Slovenia stand out on the global stage. Congratulations to that. Now, the title of today's Bled Forum is A World in Parallel Realities. And yes, it is a sobering assessment of the new environment we live in. We've just heard it. This is a moment of fracture for the world. And one of the main fault lines has opened up right here on our continent. Russia has chosen to burn its bridges with its European neighbors by invading a peaceful country. Putin and his cronies have shown that they do not believe in a global order based on rules. They believe they can do anything they please within their so-called sphere of influence. And dear Yulia Navalnaya, we have not forgotten the fate of your brave husband, Alexei Navalny. They fought him. The Kremlin's cronies fought him. They imprisoned him. And ultimately, they killed him. But they cannot kill Alexei Navalny's dream of a free Russia because it lives on in you, dear Yulia, and in so many others. Ladies and gentlemen, I was asked to focus on the Western Balkans, and I'm very happy to do so. Throughout history, this region has often been a frontier between worlds, between East and West, between North and South. But its new generations have chosen a different path. They have chosen to be part of a common European family. They have chosen to travel, to trade together, to thrive together with their European neighbors. The current Russian leadership, living in the past, refuses to accept this simple reality. Whenever there's progress towards reconciliation and regional integration in the Western Balkans, the Kremlin tries to stir up old conflicts. Russia is constantly at work to sow division inside the Western Balkans and between the Western Balkans and the rest of Europe. But, ladies and gentlemen, the vast majority of people in the Western Balkans do not want fragmentation. They want integration, and that's what we must deliver for them. During the first mandate of the European Commission, enlargement has returned to the top of our political agenda. And let's be very clear. Russia's full-fledged war in Ukraine is for Europe a turning point like 1989. We live in a different world, and we are forced to rethink our policies and objectives. If making Europe economically competitive and capable of defending itself, if this is our fundamental objective, then I see the Western Balkans' integration in the European Union as critically important. In the age of geostrategic rivalries, a larger European Union gives us a stronger voice in the world. A bigger single market increases our competitiveness and our leverage as a trading partner. It gives us the tools to respond to blackmail and unfair competition. It gives us a greater common purchasing power. Enlargement is an investment in our collective strength and security. In other words, we want a strong, competitive, and secure Europe. Well, this includes the Western Balkans as well as Ukraine and Moldova in our European Union, and all those whose European aspirations are matched by their deeds. And this is why we have instilled new life into the enlargement process. We have started accession talks with Albania and North Macedonia. We started accession talks with Ukraine and Moldova. Bosnia and Herzegovina can be next in line. And I want to thank explicitly Slovenia for your relentless work on this. Many thanks for that. You are really a good friend of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And it was this strategic reasoning that urged us to rethink our enlargement strategies. and to come with the idea of a gradual integration. Exactly 1 year ago, we launched the new growth plan for the Western Balkans, and this work is beginning to show results. And let's pause for a moment and celebrate these achievements, of which you, the Western Balkan leaders, should rightfully be very proud of. Tirana is Europe's fastest growing airport. European companies are setting up shop in Serbia and Bosnia-Herzegovina at an accelerated pace. Kosovo's economic reforms have been heralded by the IMF and are generating economic benefits. North Macedonia's investments in infrastructure are a source of inspiration. Montenegro has just seen its credit rating upgraded on the back of its sound policies. By the end of the year, 3 of you could already join our single euro payment area, and this will generate savings of over 500 million euros every year once you are all in. Dear friends, it's not even a year since we formulated this objective. Now it's an emerging reality. I think you can be so proud of it. Congratulations to that work. And later this month, our 6 partners will adopt their brand new reform agendas. They have identified some far-reaching and often overdue reforms, ranging from justice reform to the fight against organized crime, from public procurement to electricity market integration. These new reform agendas are linked to 6 billion euros in European investment. Every reform will unlock new investment. So this growth plan is basically the same model as our own recovery plan, you know it, Next Generation EU. The principle is reform gets investment. And when all these reforms will be completed, each partner will receive roughly as much aid per person as the Western Balkan would under the European Union's cohesion policy. This is a huge step forward. And why is it so important? It is important because the European Union is in the process of reinventing itself in the new geopolitical context. And we want our Western Balkan partners to be active participants in the conversation on the future of the European Union. And as we have many friends here today from our candidate countries in the audience, let me be very clear. I want our work to speed up even more. In the next Commission, enlargement must be a full-time job that allows undivided attention. And this is why I will appoint a dedicated commissioner for enlargement. Let's write history together. Our political will to integrate the countries in the region as soon as possible comes along with our firm determination that the European Union is a community of democracies. Any compromise with our democratic principles would be fatal to achieving our objectives. Both EU member states and the countries in the Western Balkan region will face tough choices. Bilateral disputes should be dealt with. Integration in the European Union will depend on governments making difficult and, yes, sometimes unpopular decisions. But this is the time we live in. Postponing decisions means making wrong decisions. But taking decisions, moving forward, means taking the lead, shaping our future, being the masters of our own destiny. And this is the essence of Europe. This is the spirit we must have to navigate the challenges of a fracturing world. Thank you very much for your attention, and long live Europe.
Thank you so much to the